It is our one look at the Huskers until they do it for real to start out the 2024 season. So much on the line and much to take in coming up this Saturday in Lincoln. Pull up a chair and let's do it here for the next 60 minutes. Comments, questions are welcome. Please leave the super chat contributions as well. We appreciate those here at the Voice of College Football. Here we go with Justin Adams, as we do each and every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central, here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate Justin, where you can catch his work right here and also over on the Big Ten show right here on YouTube.
That's right.
Justin.
How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Football's here, so I'm excited. We finally are in a somewhat of a game week, and then I'm not looking forward to the little bit of a break after that, but just excited we got some football to watch and talk about coming up on Saturday. So,
yeah, this is the month where every Saturday we've had 15, 20, 25 schools all over streaming devices and TV. And I believe, I would guess, I have not looked it up, the Big Ten Network would be hosting this game.
Yeah, I believe so. I'd have to double check, but I believe so. I usually look that stuff up like the day of, right when I'm about to go watch it.
Pretty much me as well. But the Big Ten Network has been very consistent about showing all of its teams on the main network.
Yeah.
Where the ACC and the SEC have been all over the place with all sorts of, you need plus this and extra that and whatever, where the Big Ten Network has been pretty consistent about showing all the teams, including Nebraska. So do we want to dive right into expectations?
We can. So, we got plenty to talk about with the interviews and stuff like too, but with expectations for the spring game, there's a lot of things to look at that'll make this spring game kind of more interesting than those we've seen in the past. And we kind of me and Wilson Dittman, we kind of did our players to watch, put it on the channel yesterday, and just some of the players I had on there, Emmett Johnson, I think, is one of my favorite players on this team. He's been somebody that I was high on, coming into last season, and then throughout the year when he got his opportunity after the injuries and stuff like that. So one thing that I do want to see with Emmett Johnson, and he talked about this too, is how his pass protection is, and then kind of just he talks about that next step he was taking in last year. The way he ran the ball, he was tremendous running the ball. And to do that with an offense that could not throw the ball, they were stacking the box heavy on us. And he was still able to find creases. He can make guys miss in the open field. He can run straight through the line. He can run straight through you. He can run around you. And so he's one of those guys that, Nebraska fans do a lot of times talk about a all-purpose 3-down back. And this team is not constructed to have really an all-purpose 3-down back, but more than anybody on this team, he's the guy for that job. We're all excited about Dante Dowdle as well, the transfer from Oregon. But with Dowdle, he's still young and he's not very experienced, over there, a little over 100 yards, and he averaged 5 yards per carry, albeit he'd come at the end of games and stuff like that. So the defense he was come into and the situations he would come to, that still is not enough to really gauge, but he is a physical, hard runner, and he's going to be a really good running back. However, he's just not ready. And he's going to be a part of this offense and a big part of this running back room. It sounds like all of these guys are, but I think Emmett Johnson's going to be that one go-to guy that they really need, just one consistent guy that they can bring in, third and short, or just when they need kind of a big play and, a big gash run play, maybe it's QB draw on 3rd and 17, he's one of those guys that can come out and make an explosive play in that situation. In most of the games where Nebraska's offense struggled the most, he would still average, in the realm of 4 yards per carry plus. And so the fact that we're hearing, in today's press conferences, we heard from E.J. Barthel, the running backs coach, and he was talking about how Emmett has taken the second step and how quickly he's grown up. And hearing Emmett speak himself, the maturity of him for such a young kid, he said he's seeing things differently this year. And he's, the game's coming easier to him, but it was more so the mentality that you heard when he spoke, because he's talking about them challenging them to be better and working hard. And all he mentioned was iron sharpens iron. And they asked about the competition in the running back room and, how as a young running back, did that motivate him or how did he feel about all the competition in there? And he said he would rather a running back room like that than a running back room with no competition. And most competitors are going to think that way, right? But some don't. And they talked about having the mentality for this team and having the mentality for this room. And like I said, today he did mention his pass protection. He said he takes pride in it though, and it's just as important as running. So the mentality's there. He wants to be good at blocking. Typically, if you want to be good at blocking, you can learn how to block. It's one of those things. He's got the size, he's got the physical traits, but what they're seeing right now and what they mentioned seeing with Tony White's defense is all the different looks, all the versatility. And Emmett said that's making it hard on them. And Barthel said that's making it hard on the running backs as well. So they both touched on just the difficulty of pass protection against Tony White's 3-5 defense. And so that's telling of the defense as well, but also iron sharpens iron in that sense too. Since the defense has really given Emmett a lot of different looks and giving these running backs a lot of different looks in pass protection, that's only going to make them better, because a lot of the stuff that they're seeing from this defense might be a little bit simplified in some of the, 4-3s and the 3-4s and, the base defenses like that. So, Emmett Johnson really stood out to me today and is probably, one of the players I'm always excited to see, but I really want to see how he has progressed in the next step he's taken. And I don't know if he's going to get a ton of reps, but hopefully we'll get to see a little bit of the improvement in his pass protection, some of his running ability, and just kind of, put that on display in some of the hard work he's put in. So that, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was just going to say, depending on whether you were just going to, I don't want to slow the roll here if you're still going.
No, so I wanted to just touch on Emmett Johnson. I figured I'd let you ask anything you want to ask about the spring game too before I touch on anybody else.
Well, I know Scott Satterfield made mention of this week, and this is something that Nebraska fans are not looking forward to seeing on Saturday, and that would be they don't want to see turnovers unless somebody makes some just incredible play that can't be ignored, some amazing break on the football from the cornerback position or something, but take care of the football, hang on to the football, quarterbacks making the right reads, not putting the ball in harm's way. And apparently they're making great strides in that area during spring practice.
Yeah. And Satterfield was, somebody asked the question, I couldn't quite tell who it was, but somebody asked the question about, how have the turnovers been in spring practice? And he was like, I really wish you wouldn't have asked me that question, partially because, afterwards he joked because he was like, we've improved, because he doesn't really want to jinx it. But he said they have made an improvement. And a lot of the coaches has echoed that. A lot of the players, when they talk about things, they mention ball security and that's just something they're hammering home in their heads. And, so that being a specific focus, I still think fumbling and stuff like that has a mental aspect to it. But, I think majority of the time it's just a little bit of getting careless. It's a little bit of, it's easier to make a move, make a play when you have the ball a little bit, wider. Instead, if you're like this, when your shoulders are tight and everything's tight, it's much harder to move around. So when those guys want to make a play, they hang the ball out here, or they just get a little loose and get a little careless with it, and all of a sudden the fist comes from behind and knocks it out. So, they're working everything that they can to improve these turnovers and stuff like that, but there's still an aspect of it that is going to be mental with some of these guys potentially, and could show its face. And then, with the inexperience at quarterback, we're probably going to see, we're going to see some bad interceptions. And I don't think people should get that twisted, that even though Raiola is going to be really good. He's going to make some freshman mistakes. And so, but those are expected. I just think it's the ample turnovers and just the timing of the turnovers have plagued us for so many years now. And so I do think this is the physicality that they're bringing in practice with is what they mention a lot is just it sounds like they're being so physical that these guys are going to be able to take a beating and still hold on to the football and protect the football. So at least the most of the conversation coming out of this has been turnover focused, and most people are alluding to the fact that it has improved. And what we've learned from the staff is if it was bad, they would tell us it's bad because they're pretty transparent about how people are doing. So
Justin Adams here, breaking down Nebraska football as we get together every Tuesday, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Appreciate you all being here. And again, comments and questions are welcome. Please use the super chat. Consider that as well. And if you want to hit me up for a sponsorship, I believe there are some things that we certainly can offer that may surprise you. So please hit us up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. So based on what you've been able to gather through the first 14 sessions, couple scrimmages, and now it comes to a culmination on Saturday, and maybe this is a better question for next week, but how much of this team do you think is locked down, buttoned up? These are the starters, this is the rotation, or this is the two deep versus this guy could make a move, that guy could make a move. Where are those positions of stability, security, and where are those positions where some guys still have an opportunity to break through?
Yeah. So, I still think with the way the staff is evaluating these players is I think they're going to bring it down to the wire and just make everybody really work for it. And I don't think that they're the type to get it fixated in their head that one of these guys is going to be their favorite. I think they're starting to see that. And I think that's what we're going to see in the spring game. And I'll go into just which positions specifically in a second. But, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second because I typically do that. Can you jog my memory real quick?
Yeah. So just in regards to breakout players, positions that are a little bit less stable, more stable, and what needs to be decided.
So I would probably say the depth chart right now is still in the pencil phase. They really haven't even got to pen and then print. So it's like one of those things. It's like since a lot of these guys are young and a lot of these guys have shown you got like guys like Vincent Shavers, who everybody has mentioned. Like when you talk about asking any player, any coach, who has been the biggest breakout player in this, this spring and beyond, Vincent Shavers, the way they talk about he's playing physical, he's playing hard. And so even at some of our deeper spots too, cornerback, safety, things like that, actually cornerback's not super deep. I digress. I'm just going to pull back on that statement a little bit. However, they have strengthened the cornerback room over last season. And so now there's some of these guys that still might move rooms and be able to make noise in said room. Bly Hill is somebody that I mentioned in yesterday's video as probably one of the guys I'm most excited to see how they do on Saturday, because Bly Hill being a guy who transferred in this season, but was our lowest rated transfer, was the first one that we got though. And I think he kind of flew under the radar with all the other stuff, the Raiolas, and then the other transfers we got, because we got a string of transfers there pretty quickly. And the wide receivers and the offensive players typically are the focus, but Bly Hill being the lowest rated. If you look at his film, he's fantastic. He has length. He knows how to use his body. He's a tall 6'3", very lean, but he knows how to use his body. He can get physical when need be, and his ball skills are underrated. And I think the most important thing for a cornerback and the most underrated aspect of playing cornerback are ball skills, because you look at a guy like Derek Stingley. One of the things that make Derek Stingley so good and still makes him good to this day is he talks about working ball skills since he was a kid, and working ball skills is playing wide receiver, working your hands, like just being able to go up and get the ball, just what a receiver would typically work, but working that as a DB, that adds so much of an element to your game, especially if you're a longer rangier defender like he is. So I think Blyhill is one of those guys that we might be able to see slide into that cornerback 2 spot, and I think he will. So cornerback's going to be one to watch that is very up in the air for that cornerback 2 spot, and then there may be rotation from the cornerback room into safety. So I say that to say a lot of these groups still might have some player movement and stuff like that. We'll wait to see, but that's why I think the depth chart is still very fluid right now. And again, I don't think they want to get it fixated in their mind that any of these guys are a starter right now. I think they just kind of want to. I think with their mentality is they want to see these guys each day as a separate day. You know, they're not taking what Emmett Johnson did yesterday and carrying that over into today, because you know they're taking it day by day essentially. And if you win one day and you lose the next day, well, the most recent thing you've done is you've lost. You know, so come back and have a better day. And so I think they want to keep that kind of going throughout. You know, the spring game and kind of show some of that stuff. And I think it will show. I think this team's kind of been through the ringer this offseason, a little bit more battle tested. I've mentioned the physicality and stuff like that. They've implemented a lot more new stuff. And so the offensive line, it'll be interesting to see the offensive line rotation. One of the guys I mentioned that I was excited about from the O-line was Justin Evans-Jenkins. Now, Justin Evans-Jenkins is he was a raw kind of offensive line, but very good in his run blocking grade was very low. His pass blocking grade was exceptionally high, very, very high, like in the 80s. And so he's a guy, though, you know, he's young, was a freshman last season, but still was able to come in and get meaningful reps when the offensive line was broken down. And so with him, you know, some of the things that you like to see are, you know, he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's about 6'2", probably about 340. He's listed at 315 that I saw before, but I know he's bulked up since that. So, but he's one of those guys that has a wrestling background. And I've talked about that before, how much I think wrestling helps in the trenches, because it teaches you creative ways to attack leverage one way or the other. You know, Nash, that's why I think Nash is going to develop a lot as a defensive lineman and a pass rusher this season, because I think that wrestling is going to really help. So those guys are very strong, you know, from their base. They're very good at keeping good pad level and staying below and lifting their defender off the ground, you know, lifting them upright so they don't have any leverage against them. And so I think as Justin Evans-Jenkins just really works in that run game department and blocking there, I want to see just how much of a piece of this offensive line he will be. And also see, you know, kind of the versatility he has moving around the line. You know, like reminds me kind of a Kenyon Green from Texas A&M, was drafted in the first round. And he was really drafted in the first round because of his versatility. And Justin Evans-Jenkins is the type of guy who has versatility like that. He played defensive line in high school as well and excelled as a defensive lineman. So he understands the defensive line. He understands the offensive line, and he just needs a little bit more refinement and development. But I'm excited to see, you know, some of the progress that we've made on the offensive line front.
We had a discussion, Justin and I can't remember if that was last week or the week before. Anyway, there were some comments made on social media and otherwise, and some comparisons actually that Justin brought up from one of the main sites concerning Matt Rule and Deion Sanders. I'm going through the comments right now. Nice to see that most of Husker Nation, by and large, is on Matt Rule's side in regards to that being the better hire.
Right.
There's also some comments in the chat that I'm matching up with some of the comments that came in this week regarding the fullback position.
Yeah.
Could there possibly be a quarterback who could play fullback, meaning Heinrich Harburg, or a tight end and Thomas Fidone who could play fullback?
I believe that there's a possibility of that depending on how the game goes. But I do think that they want Heinrich to really get a lot of reps at quarterback. And and they may run a package or two, but I think they really want to get a look at him at quarterback, and maybe after they rotate him out of the quarterback position, he's done throwing the ball. Maybe they'll rotate him, but I think it'd be more likely that he might go out there as a tight end or something like that, unless anybody's alluded to anything different. But they might run him out at tight end and see how he, because he's ran at tight end before. He ran a play last year before he had to step into the quarterback position, of course, and went out and caught a pass. So they do want to work tight ends around at fullback. I do know that. Carter Nelson, of course, not our early role. He's not going to be able to play, but that is something that we can look forward to as well. Is Heinrich Harburg potentially rotating at a fullback, because if the tight ends are rotating there and they see him as a potential, package tight end, they could very well do that. But if they did, it would be more for like a crowd thing, I think, and should be fun. He did mention, the fullback play and how it's coming along, and he's really seen a lot of good from the fullbacks up to this part. He mentioned Barrett Liebenbritt as kind of the one who's stood out the most with helping in pass protection. And they say he's doing a lot of things well. And so he's probably going to be a big part of, he might get some touches in the spring game. They might get to the goal line and want to get a fullback touchdown in there. So we'll see. They might do some creative stuff like that, but I don't think it's going to be something we're going to see this season.
All right. Maybe just as important as the spring game itself are some visitors coming to campus over the weekend to check out the university, the football program, and the scene at Memorial Stadium. And so, Justin, of course, those are 2025 and probably 2026 recruiting targets. So
Correct.
Who are we looking at there?
So just to name a few, Michael Terry, of course, a lot of fans know about him because he is the number one athlete in the state of Texas, or number one athlete in the state of Texas, number one athlete nationally, top 5 player in the state of Texas, 4-star recruit, probably gonna, be a 5-star at some point, and he's going to be in town this weekend. So this is a very stacked. This might be one of the more stacked classes we've seen, or more stacked groups of visitors we've seen, because you have Michael Terry there, of course, and then you also have Cortez Mills. Cortez Mills, widely known, Miami kid. He's from Florida, so Miami was kind of where he was leaning heavily. Most thought he was going to go to Miami, still kind of a lean to Miami. He visited them in June of June 21st. So it's going to be really interesting to see if we can pry, a couple of these top players out of the state of Texas and out of the Florida, because that's going to be very key for this team, because they really focus heavily on Texas and Florida. So, but just having some of these top guys from those states visiting, and of course, Cortez Mills, 95 star rated with 24/7 composite, 90 rated overall, but, top 15 receiver nationally. And then, top 80, top, he's 87th in the 24/7 composite, 186th nationally. So take that what you will with the composites and stuff like that, but very, very talented receiver, 6'1", 170, lean frame, but you look at the film and the guy is just, he's a ball hawk. He'll go find it. He's very athletic, very skilled, very fast. And so doing a lot of really good things. He was a all-Dade selection out of Florida. So, 18 touchdowns. I think he had like 1,700 yards his senior season. So then we have TJ Lateef coming in. TJ Lateef is the quarterback that I'm super excited about. And I think when TJ comes in, I'm really going to be looking forward to seeing him play, and did a film breakdown on him. Not a bigger quarterback, 6'1", 185, from Orange, California, but 4-star rated, on the composite and 24/7 sports, top 20 quarterback in that class, top 25 player in the state of California, top 300 nationally, can do a lot of things well, but sees the field really well. He also competes in track. So, he's got some speed, but he knows how to stand in the pocket and throw a football. I had 320 attempts as a sophomore, and got injured his senior season. So I had 214 passes. So, but, heavy volume, 2,400 yards passing. and 150 rushing yards. So he's one of those guys who's pass first, even though he is quick. He does have speed. So, and that's what they want on this team. They want somebody who's going to be able to stand in the pocket and make those throws. So, I'm going to butcher I'm so bad with pronunciations of some of these names, but Alai Kalaniavalu. I don't know. I probably butchered that, but interior offensive lineman. This is what we want right here. 4-star interior offensive lineman, 93 graded on the composite. 24/7 Sports has a 91. Top 10 offensive lineman nationally, top 5 player in the state of Nevada, and top 200 overall. And so, getting some of these heavy hitters on the line, to pair with your Grant Bricks and guys like that, Gibson Pyle, another guy that I'm excited about, to just kind of stack these offensive lineman classes. And, we've seen the development that they've had with the offensive line as it sits, but to get some of these, highly touted, highly rated recruits and really develop them, we can finally get an offensive line that we've traditionally seen at Nebraska, before, that really made this team hard to beat, because in the Big Ten, you got to win the trenches. Emmanuel Choice, another one, Lancaster, Texas, wide receiver, 6'4", 200 pounds, near 4-star, just 89 rated, 24/7 composite, but top 100 player in the state of Texas, top 100 receiver. So he's, got a lot of size, a lot of length, and plays, difficult ball in the state of Texas, but he's a burner. Competes in track, 110-meter hurdles and 300-meter hurdles. So he's fast, he's athletic, and it's just another dual sport athlete that they like. Then coming over to Florida again, sorry, notice the trend of these guys, Texas and Florida for a lot of them, Nevada for one. Safety, 6'2", safety's a position that we really want to get stacked up, and a lot of these safeties too potentially can rotate down to linebacker in this defense. You never know where they're going to put them, but some of these bigger, stronger physical safeties might move down. But then you got a guy like Antonio Branchi, 6'2", very lean, 89 rated on the composite, and 24/7 Sports, being recruited by schools like Florida State, Auburn, Miami, and things like that. So he's a very, very, very good player. He's already visited Florida State's camp and stuff like that. So it'll be key to get these guys in here, having this stat class coming for the spring game. They kind of get to see the fan support. They kind of get to see the offense. They get to interact with some of these players when they're in their in-game environment. And, they get to see how some of these players get coached and how, the cohesion is and all that stuff. And I think this year more than ever, that's going to be a very good thing for them to see, because it's going to show the relationships that have been built. And that goes a long way with players, and it goes a long ways with their families as well. They're going to want to know these things. And, is it a family atmosphere? Are you going to feel welcome there? So we'll get to see a lot of that interaction there, and then see how the offense looks. And hopefully some of these offensive guys like what they see.
Grab some water, Justin.
Hey.
Okay. Grab some water, take a drink. Let me talk for a few minutes. So again, we're here every Tuesday, folks. Huskers Live. Check out the Big Ten Show. That is a channel covering Big Ten football right here on YouTube, featuring Justin, our buddy Sonny Verma as well. So check out their work on the Big Ten channel.
Yes, sir.
And also, it always intrigues me to a certain extent when you have a lot of players, as you mentioned, coming up from Texas, coming up from Florida.
There's more
coming up north.
But that was that. There's more than I listed coming too, but that was just kind of the few that I wanted to touch on specifically.
The headliners. So a lot of guys come up north, and just a lot of those players have never been out of their state, out of their region, coming up north. And we saw it across Big Ten territory at the Michigan spring game, other locations. Our guy Corey Brada went to the Iowa game. It was blustery and cold. It was in the 40s. I don't know what it looked like in Nebraska last Saturday, but this Saturday we're looking at basically 80 degrees, and it looks like it's going to be mostly sunny. Yep. So, you're not going to fool anyone, I don't think, but
Right.
it can't hurt to at least plant in their minds, I'm on the field, I'm watching the game. It's a nice sunny day and it's warm.
Yeah.
And sometimes our feelings and our experiences, regardless of what we know to be true, we take from that experience more so, and that stays with us more so than what we know about what it could look like in Nebraska late November.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of under the radar things that they'll be able to see, because visiting now as opposed to the previous people that have visited, that they brought into practices and stuff like that is, they kind of get to come in and see, one of the bigger things that people talk about, and one of the running jokes that people have against Nebraska is there's nothing else to do in Nebraska, which doesn't really make sense because I mean I fly from Arizona to watch games, so. Um, it's one of those things that those players get to come see Lincoln and see that it's a city just like any other city. It's not just cornfields in Nebraska. There's a lot of them, but like there's cities there. It has an economy, and it is, there's stuff going on there. So they'll get to see that stuff, and they'll get to experience a Saturday and what it's like with the fans and the buzz. And then, like you said, with the weather being good, it does make the experience better overall too, because you got to think when people are, freezing in the cold and stuff like that, they're like, when the hell am I going to get out of here? They're not really, it's not, I don't think they can be as relaxed and as comfortable and just be able to hang out and mingle and stuff like that. At least that's how I would be, because I'm not good with the cold. But yeah, I think it's going to benefit their overall experience. And I think a lot of these guys accept the challenge of the cold. I think a lot of these guys understand that if they want to make it in the league, they're going to have to be able to play in the cold. And so I think those guys or the guys that the staff wants to target are the guys that will probably come out there regardless and be cool with it. But yeah, Texas, Florida, Vegas, you got a lot of guys coming out from very, very warm climates. And it is nice to have good weather. And so they can get a full experience of everything, and maybe even, walk around downtown Lincoln and see, that atmosphere, like I said before. So definitely an advantage to that for sure.
We've already mentioned him today. No connection to Nebraska football, but Deion Sanders also made a statement. You're probably more familiar with it than I am, since you covered the NFL and the NFL draft far more extensively than I do. About, I think it had to do specifically with his two sons and with Travis Hunter, and him not wanting them to play, and that they won't play for cold weather teams. I heard something about this a couple of weeks ago, that he made a list of teams that they would play for.
Saw that.
Yeah.
I did see that. Yeah. And it's one of those things. It's like, those players that, I don't know what the advantage is there, because they played in Colorado and stuff like that. But the mindset that they're instilling here is that we are going to put ourselves in the most difficult situations possible, so that way we're prepared. Because even EJ Barthel, today, and they didn't really even ask about it. He just kind of went into talking about how they are running like an NFL kind of style plays on offense, and they in their mentality, and what they want these guys to do is be adaptable, and not only be adaptable to those things like that, right? But but be able to attack any situation, be ready to, run different schemes if the personnel dictates that, be ready to adapt. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we've got out of this is just the mental toughness. And every player talks about, like, Gabe Ervin talked about, he's like, not everybody's built for this. And that's what's kind of showing you that when you get those guys who you really instill that mindset in them, those guys are going to want that challenge. They're going to want to see how they go play in the cold weather. They're going to want to go out there so they can build their mentality and their mental strength. So I think that's a difference between when you got, one trying to instill a foundation and grow young men, and then you have another one where they're really trying to grow a brand. One's worried about growing the foundation of the team and growing these people, these young men to be, good men, respectable men, but also develop them to be leaders and develop them to the ones that want to go and are able to go, get them to the NFL. And I think one's only worried about the players that'll get to the NFL and build a brand. So that polar opposite mindset is something that stands out to this team as well.
And if you plant that dread or that fear or that whatever you want to call it in somebody's mind that has to step out onto the field when it's 25 degrees, if you plant that into their mind that this is going to hurt your game, this is going to be something you're going to dread, you're not going to like, well, Deion Sanders should know this better than I do because he experienced it.
Playoffs.
You can go hide wherever, Jacksonville, Miami, wherever, and you are going to have to play in Buffalo, New England, Green Bay, Minnesota. We can go through the list: Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, on down the line. Shoot, we saw a playoff game in Kansas City that people don't think of that being at the top of the cold weather list, but we see some of the coldest games in Kansas City. And that game they played against the Dolphins was one of the coldest in NFL history this past postseason.
Yeah, you can't avoid road games. And yeah, like you said, it's just a lot of times, throughout history, the most successful teams have been cold weather teams. Like, look at, teams like Miami, right? Like a team like Miami, when they had to play in the cold, really was not able to score, was not able to move the ball. And so it doesn't matter how long you try to avoid it or whatever, without experience in it, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So to not be able to think ahead, and especially when you've played in that environment, I think that's why a lot of these players too are fine and really, they don't mention the weather a lot anymore. A lot of these players, it doesn't come up. They don't mention like, I didn't want to play there because of the cold weather. You may hear it every now and then, but it's not something that a lot of players talk about. So I really think it's more just of like a spoiled mentality. I want to make most of my career as easy as I can possibly make it so I can be good in those moments. And I think that's when they're more worried about the individual aspect versus the team aspect, because at the end of the day, if you can't quarterback in good weather, you can't play in good weather, you're a liability to your team when it comes crunch time in the playoffs and those things. So yeah, it's concerning, that's for sure.
William Adair's here. William, we appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Been promoted at work. Oh, you've been promoted at work. Well, congratulations, William. That's good. Been missing the live show. I glanced at that initially and thought that William was promoting the show at work.
Go ahead, William.
but that is certainly good for you, William. We say congratulations. But yes, you are also free to promote. Maybe you can now mandate that, since you've been promoted at work, to some of the people below you. Exactly. But this is the place to be on Tuesday night. We've got super chat coming in from our buddy Dave. This is Minnesota Dave. Thank you for being here, Dave. We appreciate the 5 spot. I'm going to miss playing Nebraska year in and year out. Nice fans, and we agree on 2 things. We both hate Iowa and Wisconsin.
Facts. Agreed. I appreciate that, Dave, and I appreciate that comment. Iowa fans, if you're here, Dave said it. No, I appreciate that. So did you want me to go into any more players, anything like that of the spring game? Or anything else?
That is totally up to you. That's your call. If you've got anybody else that you wanted to run down.
I just didn't know if you had any more questions about it that you wanted to run down. If you had questions about quarterback or anything like that, I was gonna bounce it off you. I can go. You made me take a sip earlier of water, so I'm giving the question time.
Okay, I just want to make sure I give you enough breathers.
I got it. Yeah, go. I got it. So,
okay, all right.
Do you want me to go through just a few more players that might be? And if anybody in here, if you have any questions about any of the players or anything, or drop the players that you are excited about, and we can kind of go into some of that stuff too. But you know, the other position group that I really want to see, and one of the players that I really want to see is Stephon Thompson, who I've talked about a lot. Reason being, I want to see Stephon Thompson and the linebacker rotation in general, because the linebacker rotation lost. They're the one position group on the defense that lost the most talent. And so it's going to be very, very key that Stephon Thompson is able to come in and immediately step into that role. And they had spoken previously in, winter mat drills and stuff like that, that he wasn't quite up to speed on things, and he was picking things up a little slower than they had hoped. But I spoke about it then, that I think that there was a little bit in that of Tony White, since he had coached Stephon Thompson before, that he had a different standard for Stephon, and knowing that Stephon is probably going to have to come in and step into a linebacker role and produce immediately, he probably was harder on him. And so once you've coached a player, you can kind of go hard on them because they understand that you're doing it for the right reasons. So seeing Stephon Thompson, seeing that linebacker rotation, and then also seeing if and when those linebackers maybe move down to edge, or those edge rushers maybe slide over in the middle on different stunts, what kind of different looks they throw, and just how flexible this linebacker room is, and just seeing how I guess how this group plays. Because last year the linebacker room was effort and physicality, and they were played hard-nosed, physical. They didn't give up on plays, and they played every snap 100%. And so I'm sure we'll see a lot of that again this year, but just seeing some of the different elements that we've added, and what kind of look that they add to this linebacker room and this defense, because like we talked about before, all of the offensive players are just talking about how difficult this defense is to play, and how much better that the difficulties that they're showing in their, looks and fronts and stuff like that, even now when they're in more of a simplistic thing. EJ Barthel talked about that they are seeing things in one day from that defense that most teams wouldn't see in a spring or in a spring practice. And so that defense is really challenging, everyone to get better. So, the linebacker room and Stephon Thompson again, Syracuse, one of the first true freshmen to start there in I think like a decade. He was able to come in, and I think he set a career high for tackles his first game out. Had a great season, and went out and got a injured towards ACL. So it was one of those things where he had to work back to the field, but he tore his ACL and was able to, he didn't even practice during the spring, but was still able to come onto the field and immediately get back after it, come up with 50 some odd tackles. And so he's another year removed from the ACL, and this could be a year where he takes a leap back to where his potential was his freshman year, because again, the stats were a little bit lower because of coming off the injury, and then not even, he was a green no contact jersey for the entirety of spring, and trying to play linebacker after coming through the spring without contact, trying to go out there and play fast and physical coming off of an injury. It's not very easy. And so the fact that he was still able to go out there and produce at a high level, I'm really excited to see what he brings, and just this linebacker rotation in general, and the defensive rotation. I talked about it before with the cornerback 2 spot, that some of these cornerbacks are going to be rotating to, Malcolm Hartzog to safety, and those rotations there, and even the running back rotation. I talked about Emmett Johnson before, but they say Ramir's ready to go. He's not going to be in the spring game, of course, but they say Ramir's ready to go, and right now they don't have him practicing in spring because he, they already know. He's already experienced. They already know what he brings. EJ Barthel, our running back coach, said he's known Ramir Johnson since high school, and thought Ramir should have started under the previous staff. And he's like, I don't know what happened there, but I'm not going to speak on that. So the running backs that we have here, and even some of the guys that they mentioned that aren't even scholarship guys. He went through a list of guys that are also helping. Ken Williams being an explosive young player, Maurice Mazuka, he said he's doing great things. And he said in a situation, if Maurice was in a situation where it's at the end of the game and he has to finish the game, he's that type of guy. He's going to be able to come in and finish the game. These guys aren't even scholarship guys. So even seeing some of these guys coming through that running back rotation and seeing just how the depth is in this running back room, just because Gabe Ervin, with his injury history, but it sounds like Gabe Ervin is ready to come back. It sounds like he's feeling strong, feeling good. But Ramir Johnson recurring, injuries throughout his career. So we might have to lean on some of those guys, that aren't on scholarship and stuff like that. And so they talked about having everybody on the depth chart ready. And so being able to see some of those guys who we necessarily might not think are going to get a ton of playing time, but might actually have to. And so we can't, with what happened last year, we can't take the focus off any of these players being players that won't be seeing the field during the season. And so treat it as such, just be able to kind of look for those little details, especially at the rooms that we've significantly had real bad injury issues in. Wide receiver room, it's going to be very important there to see Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks and how they integrate to this offense, because Jamal Banks has been showing a lot this spring. They show flashes and little highlights of what he's doing, and we knew coming in just how good he was. And it's that Wake Forest offense. Wake Forest offense wasn't good. They didn't have a good quarterback. It just wasn't designed for wide receiver numbers. But when you look at Jamal Banks' films, he does everything well. He's physical, but he can also beat you at the line. He beats press coverage a lot on his film. And they mentioned that they got to get better overall at beating press coverage. So I want to see just kind of how the defense does against press. Because the way to beat press is you just have to attack that leverage, and you have to win at the line of scrimmage with your feet or your hands. And so to see how they're doing in press coverage, because they did point that as a point of emphasis that they struggled at, but seeing this Isaiah Nair, Jamal Banks, and that dynamic on the field, and just how they play off of each other, and then also how these young guys fill into those roles, because I definitely think Jamal Banks and Nair are going to be starting. Nair, he is a bigger guy, but he's a burner. He's a playmaker. He can go, get the ball deep, but he can go up and get a ball as well. And you can get the ball in space, and he can make guys miss. And then you go over to a guy like Jamal Banks. He's going to be your possession guy. I've said this before, but Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair kind of remind me of Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins in 2017 with the Texans. You have one guy, because Jamal Banks had no drops last season. So you have one guy who's very sure-handed, knows how to use his body, knows how to go up and high point a ball, and knows how to win. And Isaiah Nair also, they talked about him winning contested catches and stuff like that. So you got a couple of guys like that, but you also have Isaiah Nair. Now, Will Fuller couldn't catch to save his life. I'm more so talking about these guys that you can put in different situations. Like you can get Isaiah Nair in a crosser. That's what they used to run all the time in that Texans team, was crossers. And what would happen is you'd make the safety make a choice. They go wrong because you D-hop as your number one, and then Will Fuller will burn for a touchdown. So it's going to be interesting to see the play concepts, play designs, and also to see these young receivers and the step that they've taken since last year. Now into year two of this staff, they got a lot of reps last year. Gabe talked about Emmett Johnson. That's what made him better, was getting those reps last year and made him so ready for the leap that he's going to take in this spring, or the leap that he's taken this spring and into next season. And so just seeing some of these young guys and the development they've had because they got thrown to the fire, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch that. But yeah, just seeing, and everything is going to be super, super vanilla again. But there are some things that we can key on and watch on that this year kind of will be a little bit more intriguing than previous springs.
We've got about 80 folks on the line now. 2/3 of you are watching us on X, so keep this in mind. You're just a click or two away from YouTube. You can catch us on YouTube. You can join the discussion, and you can get entrenched here on Nebraska Talk here every week, Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. And of course, we provide videos throughout the week, courtesy Justin Adams. And you can also catch Justin's work in addition to here over on the Big Ten channel right here on YouTube. And as you see on the screen, our next show coming up here, Michigan Wolverines Live. Great show. John D'Adamo, TJ Konerski, Ferris Khan sizing up Michigan following their spring game and their ensuing quarterback battle. Really good show. Go over there, support, trash talk, troll, do whatever you want. They don't mind. So get on over there at 8 p.m. Eastern time as soon as we're done here.
For sure.
So, Justin, we do a live update every day at 3 p.m. Eastern time with the transfer portal, and we just roll through everyone and see what's going on. And so you got the announcements, and then you've got all the news that comes out about who's visiting where. And then, of course, you've got what's coming in over the last couple of days. Guys are starting to make decisions.
Yes.
Nebraska has been pretty absent. It's been pretty quiet on both sides, fairly quiet on both sides. Do you expect that to change after Saturday? Or the numbers showing that there are going to have to be moves in regards to scholarships? Or do you think things are going to be relatively quiet next week?
They've alluded to the fact that they didn't lose as many guys as expected. But, I mean, Rule had said before, he's like, I've done this before. I've done this time and time again. He's like, I have a plan and the numbers will be fine. He said, well, they'll take care of themselves and we know how to handle those things. Nebraska hasn't been really in on many guys hitting the portal until today. I saw that Donovan Edwards, I believe was it Donovan Edwards from Colorado? Yeah.
Dylan. Yep.
Oh, Dylan Edwards. Sorry. Donovan Edwards.
Michigan.
That's right. Or Dylan Edwards. Sorry. I guess I talk about Michigan more, but Dylan Edwards, Nebraska was listed as one of the 3 teams that he's potentially interested in. So, yeah, there was a little video today about 3 teams. I can't remember the other 2, but Nebraska's in on him potentially, and that speaks again to the fact that they might not be done yet, and maybe they aren't as bad off on numbers. Or maybe they have a plan for these numbers, or they plan on bringing him in as a non-scholarship NIL type of scholarship. But yeah, so they haven't been very, very active, but they are putting the feelers out because we see now that there's interest and mutual interest in this case. So that will be the biggest thing to see how it plays out. And I think a lot of these guys and a lot of the staff will get a feel for just what some of these guys are made of because, practice one thing when you get out there in the game and they start it being reaction and instinct instead of drills and stuff like that, you get to see how far along these guys developed are in their IQ, their football IQ, and their football minds, and how much of it is instinct and how much of it is thought process and too much thinking. Who's reacting, who's doing the right things, who's where they need to be. So yeah, I think maybe after that they might get a better idea of where some of these guys land and maybe have a conversation. But I don't know if maybe their plan might be, I don't know if they can convert these guys from scholarship to NIL deal. I don't know. But it seems like they're very confident in where they stand with numbers.
It amazes me at this point how many of these players, as we go through it, and this is something we didn't see until this cycle of the transfer portal, and we've had about 6 or 7 at this point in regards to, I know the transfer portal, a lot of people don't know this, it's been around a long, long time, but in regards to the way it functions now, it's been about 3 years that it's functioned this way. And of course, we've got the 2 windows every year, but this is the first time we are seeing guys that transferred at the end of 2023 in December that will never play for their new team because they're back in the transfer portal. And now I see a USC wide receiver who went USC, UCLA. He's going back to USC now, Kyle Ford. I was just checking the latest to see if there's anything out there on Dylan Edwards or anyone else, but don't see anything connected to Nebraska per se.
Yeah, I can't remember where that clip came from, and I think they might have been because I didn't actually get a chance to watch it, but I had saw it on Twitter and just saw what the caption said, and so there seems to be. I don't know if it was him that was actually saying it or what, but there is one of the questions with some of these guys coming over from Colorado, just kind of um are just in general, like, you know, what they've kind of become as a football player, and do they fit? Because I think to come in this late in the process, they need to fit the mentality and the mindset of this team. And so that fitting into the culture here is going to be very, very important. And so the polar opposites, like we've talked about, between the way Dion operates and the way Rule operates, do they see that transition going well? Because they are not afraid to turn a guy away if he's bad for the locker room and bad cultural fit, because they're kind of under the pretense of the guys that like will stay here are the guys that need to be here, and that's the guys that we want. And those guys that don't fit into this and what we're doing, and like I said, it's so late in spring, it's going to be really hard for a guy that probably wants to come in immediately and have a big role in the offense, to be able to gain some headway in this experienced, room. Well, there's not a ton of experience, but there is experience. There's just not a lot of middle. It's either experienced or, very fresh. And so I just don't think there's I don't know. That's my only question, because it's one thing to look at a player's talent and see them on the field, but there's so much to a player that we don't see. And so just with the way, I don't know how accountability was there, but it doesn't seem like those things that they're trying to instill here are in, the works over there, and the mindsets are just different. And so that would be one of the tough things for a player coming over from Colorado, for sure. But it is intriguing. It is exciting. And it does give us an indication that they still are putting feelers out, because we weren't sure if, how that was coming along. So like I said, it's been very, very quiet in regards to that front.
Our old buddy Jeff Sims is visiting Arizona State this weekend.
Yeah, he's going to be out here. I'm going to go pop his tires for everybody. No, I'm just kidding. I wish Sims the best. And if he goes to ASU, I hope he does well. But yeah, be careful. There's a lot of Husker fans out here. I don't know if they're as nice, but they'll come to the game to boo you. But no, it's one of those things. It's like, it could be exciting to see him come over here, and just maybe go watch him play. Hopefully he can kind of get everything together, and maybe ASU runs an offense where he can just kind of play loose and just play his style. So I hope he does well.
I hate to say it, and I went on and on about this in our previous show, Hawkeyes Live on the Iowa channel. Folks, check it out. But I said over and over and over when the season ended, go get a quarterback in the transfer portal. Cade McNamara is brittle. He's played 7 games in 2 years. Even when he was at his best at Michigan, I think he's slightly overrated. Good game manager, good when he's got everything working around him. And of course, he played for a much better team with much more talent around him. Played well, managed the game, but typically threw his 18 or 20 passes a game. Well, they're relying on Cade McNamara. Now they got Marco Lioness, who's just a runner who's got no experience.
Yep.
And Deacon Hill, who was not a good quarterback, probably the worst starting quarterback in the Big Ten last year, despite Iowa winning the division. He takes off, and now the quarterback selections are not the best. And Jaden Rashad is not going to Iowa. So they now have to go get a quarterback. And I was pleading with them in December, go get a quarterback, when there were dozens of good, capable quarterbacks.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember that, because they're quarterback away. What are you doing? And yeah, that doesn't make sense. And yeah, they're quarterback away. It's I don't understand, but it's a great position for them to be in for us.
Michigan Live, it's coming up directly next over on the Michigan channel. Please check it out. In the meantime, keep it locked in here on the Nebraska channel. Justin will have videos, and we will, in totality, of course, the spring games coming up on Saturday as well. Check out Justin's work along with Sonny Verma over on the Big Ten show. What's going on there?
I'll go live after the spring game, by the way.
Yes, I should have asked you that.
Yes.
I didn't want to put you on the spot. Justin's live after the spring game. So
join me here. Let's have some fun. Let's talk some football, and let's just hang out. It'll be a good time.
We will need to promote that. We will be promoting that. I'll be on X. I'll be on the other channels promoting that. But you guys can all promote that by talking to people that never hear from us. So please help us out as we continue to grow and build this channel. And this is a big part of it during the off season is the spring game. Yep. And we've got post game with Justin.
And then also the part 2 of the, if y'all haven't had a chance to go check out the video I put on this channel yesterday, me and Wilson Dittman on YouTube. If you have seen his stuff, if you haven't, go check him out because our part 2 will be on his channel tomorrow. So just to give you a heads up, it's part 1 and part 2. One on our channel posted yesterday, one on his channel posted tomorrow. So y'all go check those out too as a little bit of a primer for the spring game. We went over top storylines on his, and 5 players were excited to watch on mine, and we had 5 each, so 10 total.
Okay, folks, I'm actually not going to be live for about 12 hours until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, but I am recording Florida and TCU content here in the next few minutes. So we keep working here at the Voice of College Football. And again, Justin with the Big Ten show right here on YouTube, and of course his work. And look at the banner, Spring Game Post. That answers all your questions right there. So join Justin right here after Nebraska gets done playing Nebraska.
Can I give you a shout out? Mark came on to the Big Ten show, and his show was our most watched. It's almost at 15,000 views. So we got to give Mark credit because people liked him coming on the Big Ten show. So
I'm going to credit the thumbnail. That was a good looking thumbnail.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that one just kind of came together. I was just sitting there. I'm like, dude, what can I add to this? And then it just kind of everything clicked at once. I was like, all right, I love this. Yeah, appreciate that. I was proud of that one.
All right, Justin. Thanks for doing this as always. You make this thing go.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you.
See everybody back here next Tuesday. But remember, post game after the spring game on Saturday with Justin.